The wind over the Giza Plateau has always carried whispers. Whispers of kings who believed they could cheat death. Whispers of monuments that were not built by human hands alone. And above them all, one figure that has stared across the desert for thousands of years, unblinking, unmoving. Watching the Great Sphinx of Giza. For centuries, it has been called a riddle in stone. A lion's body with a human face, its gaze fixed toward the rising sun. But now, in the depths beneath its withered paws, researchers have found something that should not be there. Something sealed away for millennia. Something that could rewrite not only the history of Egypt, but the story of human civilization itself. This was never supposed to happen. Official excavations around the Sphinx have been carefully controlled for decades. The Egyptian government has allowed only limited digging in the immediate area, citing preservation concerns. But in late 2024, a joint team of Egyptian archaeologists and international researchers gained rare permission to conduct a new form of non-invasive scanning, cutting-edge ground-penetrating radar combi. Led with muon tomography, the goal was simple: to map the structure beneath the Sphinx without touching a single grain of sand. What they found was not simple at all. The scans revealed an anomaly, an unnatural void deep beneath the Sphinx's front paws, not a small chamber, but a vast rectangular cavity. The angles were too perfect to be natural. The walls seemed smooth, the edges straight, even more disturbing. The void did not appear empty. The density readings suggested the presence of objects large, solid, and arranged in a pattern. At first, the team thought it might be a previously unknown storage chamber from the Old Kingdom era. But then an older member of the team remembered something. An obscure reference in the writings of the ancient historian Pliny the Elder, a mention of a hidden library buried near the Sphinx, containing the wisdom of those who came before the pharaohs. That phrase, "those who came before," was not something the Egyptian Ministry of Antiquities liked to hear. It implied a time before Egypt as we know it, a time before the first dynasties, a time that official archaeology barely acknowledges. The team pressed on, knowing they were on the edge of something massive. Night after night, the scans became clearer. They could see columns, 4 of them supporting a ceiling within the void. They could detect what might be stone containers or sarcophagi. And in the farthest corner, a shape that made the lead scientists' blood run cold, an object that appeared metallic, with dimensions that did not match any known artifact from the Giza Plateau. They kept their findings quiet at first, but secrecy is fragile in the world of archaeology. Rumors leaked. Some claimed the team had discovered a tomb older than the pyramids themselves. Others whispered about alien artifacts, about a lost civilization that had vanished in a great cataclysm. The truth, however, was stranger still. Under the cover of darkness, permission was granted for a micro-drilling operation to insert a fiber-optic camera into the void. The world would never see the raw footage, but those who did have never forgotten it. As the camera descended into the blackness beneath the Sphinx, the beam of its light fell on carvings, lines of symbols that no Egyptologist could recognize. Not hieroglyphs, not any known writing system. The stone around them was polished to a mirror sheen, unlike the rough-cut limestone above. And then, the beam moved across something that should have been impossible. A perfectly preserved human skeleton, yet not like any human ever recorded. The proportions were wrong. The skull was elongated, the rib cage wider. It lay sprawled across the floor as if it had fallen there and attached for thousands of years. By now, the team understood why the area under the Sphinx had remained sealed for so long. The next morning, the Egyptian authorities ordered all work to stop. The cavity was declared structurally unstable, and all foreign researchers were escorted from it. The site, the official line to the media, was that the anomaly was a natural fissure, nothing more. But some members of the team could not stay silent. One of them, an American geophysicist named Dr. Alan Reeves, leaked portions of the scan data to a journalist in an encrypted message. Reeves wrote, "We have been lied to about the origins of the Sphinx. What we found proves it is older, much older than anyone was willing to admit, and whatever is under there is not from this world." His message was cut off mid-sentence. Reeves vanished 2 days later. No one has seen him since. In the weeks that followed, the Egyptian government tightened security around the Sphinx. Armed guards patrolled day and night. Unauthorized drones were shot down. Researchers who spoke out were threatened with arrest. And yet, something was happening beneath the sands. Locals reported seeing strange lights near the Sphinx at night, pale blue glows that seemed to emanate from the ground itself. Bedouin guides claimed to hear low, resonant hums when the wind was still, a sound that seemed to vibrate in the bones. It was as if whatever lay beneath the Sphinx had awakened. The question now was simple. What exactly had they uncovered? And why had it been hidden for so long? The answer would not come from the authorities. It would come from an unlikely alliance of independent researchers, rogue archaeologists, and a handful of insiders willing to risk everything. They were about to return to the Sphinx, not to worship it as the ancients once had, but to open it, to see with their own eyes the secret it had guarded for more than 12,000 years. But they had no idea what they were walking into. 2 weeks after the official shutdown, the Giza Plateau was quiet again, at least on the surface. Tourists posed for photographs, unaware that just meters beneath their feet, something waited in darkness. The official guards had grown complacent, believing that the mystery had been buried once more. They were wrong. On a moonless night in early February, 3 vehicles rolled silently along the western edge of the plateau. Their headlights were off. Inside were 6 people, 4 men, 2 women, each with their own reasons for being there. Some were scholars, others adventurers, and one, an Egyptian archaeologist named Layla Hassan, had been on the original scan team before being forced off the project. They had no government permission. What they did have was knowledge, exact coordinates of the anomaly, and a plan to reach it without alerting the guards. The Sphinx's massive limestone body rested above natural bedrock, but centuries of repairs had created hidden maintenance shafts. One of these shafts, long forgotten, lay under a sand-covered slab just 30 meters to the west. It had been used during 1920s restoration work, then sealed. That night, the group uncovered it, revealing a narrow passage dropping straight into the earth. One by one, they descended, their headlamps slicing through stale air. The shaft led to a low tunnel, the walls rough and ancient. They moved in silence, every sound amplified by the stone around them. After 50 meters, they reached a dead-end door, what looked like one. Layla ran her hand across the wall, feeling for the seam she knew was there. Her fingers found it, a hairline gap between 2 blocks. She produced a steel rod, inserted it into a barely visible hole, and pushed. With a deep groan, the stone pivoted inward, revealing a black void. They stepped inside. The air was cold, and naturally so. Their breath misted. They were under the Sphinx now. The tunnel opened into a vast chamber supported by 4 pillars, exactly as the scans had shown. Their lights swept across smooth stone walls, covered in strange, looping symbols that seemed to shimmer faintly. None of the group recognized the script, though one man, a linguist from Prague, whispered that it resembled nothing from the known human record. And then they saw the 3 massive stone sarcophagi ranged in a perfect triangle. Each was sealed, the lids carved with the image of a figure neither fully human nor animal. The proportions were wrong, limbs too long, heads elongated, eyes almond-shaped and slanted upward. In the center of the chamber, raised on a pedestal, stood the metallic object seen in the scans. It was about the size of a small car, made from a dull, silver-gray material that reflected no light. Its surface was covered in intricate grooves, spirals, and geometric patterns that seemed almost alive when the light touched them. One of the adventurers, a geologist named Marlowe, reached out to touch it. Layla grabbed his wrist. "Don't," she said sharply. "We don't know what it is." But it was too late. His fingertips brushed the surface and the chamber seemed to breathe. A low vibration filled the air, deep and resonant. Dust drifted from the ceiling. The metallic object began to emit a faint, pulsing light from within its grooves. The sarcophagi shifted just slightly, but enough to make the stone grind against stone. The group froze, the vibration intensified. And with it came something else, a sound, not a mechanical hum, but something almost alive. A chorus of deep, layered tones that seemed to form patterns, as if the object were speaking. The linguist clutched his head. "It's language," he gasped. "It's trying to communicate." But the words, or whatever they were not meant for human ears. One of the women screamed and staggered back, her eyes wide with terror. She claimed she had seen shapes moving inside the sarcophagi, long, pale limbs pressing against the stone from within. Layla forced herself to look closer. She saw it too. The lids were no longer flush with the bases. Gaps had formed, and something inside was shifting, slow and deliberate. The group argued, half wanted to flee, half wanted to open one of the sarcophagi to see what was inside. In the end, curiosity won. They pried open the lid of the nearest one, stone scraping painfully as it slid. The smell hit them first, a cold, metallic tang mixed with something ancient and sweet. Like flowers long dead, inside lay a figure wrapped in a thin, metallic-looking shroud. It was humanoid, but impossibly tall, even curled in death. Its skin, or what remained of it, was pale, almost translucent, stretched tight over long bones. The skull was elongated, the jaw narrow, the eye sockets huge and angled. The group stood in stunned silence. "This is not human," Marlowe whispered. "And it's not mummified. This body was preserved by something else." Layla noticed the grooves on the metallic shroud matched the patterns on the central object. It wasn't a random design, it was the same language, the same geometry. They were connected. The linguist, pale and shaking, claimed he could almost understand it now. "It's not just language," he said, "it's instructions." A warning. Before anyone could react, the metallic object pulsed brighter. The vibration became a roar. The other two sarcophagi began to open on their own. Something was waking up. The group panicked. Layla yelled for them to leave. But the tunnel back to the shaft was already vibrating. Dust cascading from above, the air grew thick, oppressive, almost liquid. The lights flickered, and then the sound stopped. The metallic object's glow faded to nothing. The lids of the sarcophagi slammed shut as if nothing had happened. In the sudden silence, the group's ragged breathing was deafening. They didn't wait to investigate. They fled through the tunnel, climbing out into the cold, desert air just before dawn. But not all of them made it. The linguist never emerged. The desert was silent when they emerged, but the group knew it would not remain so. Layla counted the survivors 5. The 6th, the linguist, was still below. They argued about going back, but every instinct screamed that returning now would be suicide. The metallic object had gone dormant. But what if that was only temporary? By sunrise, they had covered the maintenance shaft with sand again, erasing all trace of their intrusion. But secrets do not stay buried in Egypt. 2 days later, Layla's apartment in Cairo was raided. Her notes, photographs, and equipment were seized. The others reported similar break-ins. None of them were arrested yet, but the message was clear: stay silent. The official news outlets reported nothing, no mention of the anomaly, the chamber, or the missing linguist. Instead, the government announced new structural preservation work on the Sphinx, closing the entire area to the public for 6 months. But Layla could not let it go. She began piecing together the symbols she had seen, working from memory. Late one night, she realized something chilling. The symbols were not just instructions, they were a map. Not a map of Egypt, but of the stars. And at the center of that celestial map was a constellation whose alignment with Earth had last occurred over 12,000 years ago. This meant only one thing. The chamber beneath the Sphinx had been sealed long before the rise of the first pharaohs. That night, she received an encrypted email from an unknown sender. Attached was a single file, a still image from a camera feed. It showed the missing linguist alive but pale. Standing in the chamber, behind him, the metallic object was glowing again, brighter than before. And in the glow, barely visible, were tall, shadowed figures standing upright beside the sarcophagi. The email contained no words, only a set of coordinates deep in the eastern desert. Layla knew it was a trap, but she also knew it was her only chance to find answers. She contacted Marlowe and the others, only to agree to come. They drove for hours into the barren wasteland, guided only by GPS. At the coordinates, they found not ruins, but a narrow canyon. In its depths was an opening cut into solid rock, perfectly smooth, leading downward. No markings, no signs of weathering. The air from below was cold. As they descended, the walls began to glow faintly with the same shimmering patterns they had seen beneath the Sphinx. The tunnel ended in a vast underground chamber, unlike anything they had ever seen. The ceiling arched high above, supported by massive pillars carved from a single piece of stone. In the center, on a raised platform, stood the metallic object from the Sphinx chamber, but this one was different. It was larger, and it was active. The grooves blazed with light, the pattern shifting and changing like flowing water. Standing beside it was the linguist. His eyes were black, his skin unnaturally smooth, his voice deeper when he spoke. "It's not a warning," he said. "It's an invitation." Layla demanded to know what had happened to him. He smiled faintly. "They showed me the truth. The Sphinx is not a monument. It's a seal, a lock, and we have opened it." The ground trembled. From the shadows, the tall figures stepped forward, three of them, identical to the forms carved on the sarcophagi. Their movements were fluid and natural. They stopped a few meters away, their almond-shaped eyes reflecting the shifting light. One raised its hand. Layla felt the vibration again, but this time it wasn't sound, it was in her mind. Images flooded her thoughts. A great flood, cities swallowed by the sea, the survivors sealing away their knowledge, and their dead beneath a monument that would outlast empires. The Sphinx, the metallic object, a warning that one day the seal would be broken and the cycle would begin again. She stumbled back, shaking, as the linguist approached the object and placed his hand on it. The light flared, blinding. When she could see again, he was gone. So were the tall figures. Only the object remained, silent once more. Layla and the others fled, driving through the night without stopping. By dawn they reached Cairo. They never spoke publicly about what they had seen, but in the weeks that followed, strange things began to happen. Satellite imagery of the Giza plateau showed heat signatures beneath the Sphinx, patterns that seemed to pulse rhythmically. Bedouins reported that the low hum had returned, louder than before, and on a single night in March, every seismograph in Egypt recorded a faint but measurable vibration centered precisely on the Sphinx. Layla knew what it meant. The seal was weakening. The Sphinx was no longer silent. Whatever had been buried beneath it for 12,000 years was stirring again, and this time there might be no way to put it back.